If you've ever felt like you have the best product or service, but nobody takes you seriously, or you struggle to close deals even when prospects seem interested, you're about to discover something really powerful. You see, most people think selling is about features and benefits and being pushy and closing deals. But here's the truth: I found that that approach is killing your sales. And the reality is that selling is 90% psychological and maybe 10% product and knowledge. It's really about understanding how the human brain works and makes decisions, and then using that knowledge ethically, this is very important, to help people solve their problems. And today I'm going to share with you 13 really kind of dark psychology hacks that top salespeople and founders use to close deals consistently. And now, very important, these are not manipulative tricks. They're scientifically backed principles of human behavior that, when used ethically, and I want to underscore that, please, will help you serve your customers in a very genuine way. Hey, by the way, I'm Craig Hewitt, and over the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds of founders scale their sales efforts and grow their businesses. I've trained hundreds of entrepreneurs, founders, and salespeople, and these 13 hacks have generated millions and tens of millions of dollars for myself and my clients. Okay, let's dive in with hack number one is the pain before gain framework. Here's something that'll shock you about human psychology. If there is no pain, there is simply no sale. I don't care what anybody says. Most people try to lead with benefits and features, but that's doing it backwards. The strongest emotion that drives purchasing decisions is not pleasure, it's pain. And think about it. When's the last time you bought something when everything in your life was peachy keen and perfect? Probably never, or rarely, right? You bought it because something was bothering you. And here is how this works in practice. Before you ever mention your solution, you need to help your prospect fully experience their current pain. And I call this the latent pain to extreme pain progression. First, there's the latent pain, problems people have but don't really realize, I guess. Like someone working a job that they hate but thinking, hey, this is just how life is. And then there's the realized pain when they understand that they have a problem. And finally, the extreme pain was when that cost of doing nothing becomes just unbearable for them. So our job isn't to create any fake pain, that's just not genuine and helpful for anybody, but to help them see the true cost of their current situation. So if someone's struggling with lead generation, for say, don't just say, hey, we'll help you get more leads. First, help them calculate exactly how much money they're losing every month without a steady pipeline. The framework is simple, right? Pain, gap, urgency. Show them where they are, show them where they want to be, and help them understand why waiting makes everything worse. Okay, hack number two is the rags to riches kind of story structure. Look, people don't buy products, they buy transformations. And the most powerful way to sell a transformation is through storytelling, and specifically this rags to riches narrative. And here's why this works. When you tell a story where you started versus where you are now and where you ended up, you create what psychologists call social proof through identification. And your prospect sees themselves in your starting point and believes that they can achieve your ending point. You see this all the time in infomarketer products, right? But here's the key. You can't just say, I was broke and now I'm rich. End of story. No, you need three critical elements: the pit of darkness, the obstacles, and the turning point. Let's dive into each of those because they're all very important. The pit of darkness is where you paint the absolute worst moment. I was down to my last $200, living in my parents' basement, and everyone told me I was crazy for trying. Now, the obstacles show the struggle was real and kind of contextualizes this for folks. And for 6 months, every business idea I tried failed. I got rejected from Y Combinator, and I got shut down 47 times. And then the turning point is when everything changed. But then I discovered this one thing that changed everything in my life. And this story structure works because it shows the prospects that transformation is possible, but it wasn't easy, which makes it believable. If you make it sound too easy, they won't trust you. If you make it seem impossible, they won't even try. And by the way, if you want a simple framework for crafting your own rags to riches story that converts prospects into customers, I've created a free planning worksheet that gives you the exact template I'm talking about here and that I use. I'll put a link in the description below, completely free, and walks you through each step of this process. Okay, hack number 3 is throwing rocks at enemies. So here's a psychological principle that top salespeople and founders understand: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And when you identify and attack your prospects' common enemies, you instantly kind of build rapport and trust. Every prospect has enemies, people or things that are holding them back or making their life difficult. It could be their competition, their current vendor, industry regulations, politics, or even their own limiting beliefs. And when you throw rocks at these enemies, you're positioning yourself on their side of the field and on their side of the table. You become their ally and not another person just trying to sell them something. And so here is how this might sound in practice. Hey, I bet you're tired of agencies that overpromise and underdeliver, right? These companies that take your money and then you never hear from them again. Sounds familiar, right? Or consultants who give you generic advice that doesn't actually work for your specific industry. Notice what's happening here? I'm not directly selling anything. I'm just helping them identify their frustrations that they might not even realize and showing that I understand their worldviews and the problems that their businesses have. And this creates an us versus them mentality where your prospect feels like you truly get what they're going through. And the key here is to be very, very specific. Don't just say, oh, your competitors suck. Identify the specific behaviors, promises, or characteristics that their enemies frustrate your prospects the most. Okay, number 4 is the adventurer's positioning. Okay, so what if you're new to an industry and you don't have a ton of experience yet? Here's a hack that I really like: position myself as an amateur and not the expert. This is a little counterintuitive, but stick with me. Instead of pretending to know everything, say, look, I'm on a mission to figure out exactly this problem. I'm looking for a few people to come along for the journey with me. I may not have all the answers yet, but I am committed to figuring this out with you, and you'll learn everything I discover along the way. And this works for 3 psychological reasons in particular. First, it protects you from your imposter syndrome, which we all have. You're not claiming to be something that you're not. Second, it creates excitement. People love being a part of something new and pioneering in this kind of movement. And third, it builds authentic trust because you're being completely honest about kind of where you're at right now. And I've seen new coaches use this in positioning to land their first 5 clients within like 30 days. And the key here is that you're not selling certainty, you're selling commitment and partnership. Okay, psychology hack number 5 is build what they want in real time. So here's how I like to sell something before I've ever built it. And I've done this dozens of times. I reverse the traditional process entirely, inversion, right? As Warren Buffett would say. So instead of building something first and selling second, I sell first and build second. And here's how this works in a sales call. You ask discovery questions, and we've covered that in other videos here on the channel, to understand the exact pain points. And then I mirror the problems back as solutions. So I'll say something like, hey, so let me understand, your biggest challenge is lead generation, specifically getting qualified prospects to book a call with you. And you want this to work even if you're not a tech savvy founder. Yep. Interesting. What if I could create a system that does exactly that, gets you qualified leads and booked calls without you having to touch any complicated software? Would that solve your problem for you? You see what I did here? I just took their exact words and flipped them into a solution. I'm essentially custom building the offer based on what they tell me they need. And I like this, and it's really powerful because they feel like you truly understand their unique situation. And once they say yes to this custom solution, then you just go build it. You're a founder. You know how to build the parachute on the way down. You validated demand before investing an ounce of time or a dollar in a solution. Okay, psychology hack number 6 is social proof matching. Not all social proof is created the same. The psychological key here is relevance. Your prospect needs to see themselves in your success stories. And here's like where I think most founders get this wrong. They share any and old testimonial or case study they have, but they might not be relevant to the person you're selling to, right? If you're selling to a 50-year-old executive and you show them the results from a 25-year-old, techie startup founder in San Francisco, the psychological connection breaks down here, right? They think, well, great, that's great for them, but it won't work for me. And this is one of the key tenets that I talk about all the time here in sales is, will this work and will this work for me? And the fix is social proof matching. For every prospect, present a case study or testimonial from the person most similar to them. Same industry, same situation, same demographic, same business size, same goals. if possible, right? And when you get this right, the psychological impact is huge. They'll think, well, hey, it worked for someone just like me. It'll probably work for me too. And of course, this eliminates the biggest objection that most prospects have, which we already mentioned, which is, hey, this sounds good, but I'm different. Hack number 7 is the why now urgency stack. People love to procrastinate, and I'm no different. Even when they know that they need your solution, they'll often say, okay, let me think about it, or maybe next month. Here's how I like to create ethical urgency using psychology. The urgency stack has two components: scarcity and consequences. Scarcity limits their options, and consequences shows them what happens if they wait. And for scarcity, I'll say something like, hey, I can only work with 5 clients at a time. And because of the personal attention I give each one, right now I have 4. So there's 1 spot available, but I have 2 other people considering this as well that I've spoken to this week. And then for consequences, I'll say something like, here's what I've noticed. Every month you wait is costing you approximately $5,000 in lost revenue. If we start now, you could have the system up and running by next month. If we wait till next quarter, that's another $15,000 you will never recover. And this really isn't manipulation. It's just helping them see the true cost of inaction, which is a hurdle that all salespeople have to get over. Okay, hack number 8 is the empathy bridge. People don't remember what you say often. They remember how you made them feel. The empathy bridge is how you make prospects feel understood, which is the foundation of trust. Active listening here is just the beginning. You need to demonstrate that you're listening through verbal and physical cues. Things like, I see, tell me more about that, must have been frustrating. But here's the advanced technique. Ask questions that only make sense if you're actually listening and paying attention instead of just mindlessly following a script. So instead of like, hey, what's your budget? Ask, hey, you mentioned earlier that budgets are tight this quarter because of a new software purchase and a new CEO. For something like this, what would make sense investment-wise for you? You see what we did there? This shows that you weren't just waiting for your turn to talk, but that you're genuinely absorbing and processing what they say. Okay, psychology trick number 9 is to seek truth, not victory. And this may seem counterintuitive at first, but stick with me. You see, I think most founders and salespeople try to win arguments and convince people of things. But the truth is that the moment you try to prove you're right, you've lost. So don't even try. Instead, adopt what I call truth seeking. Your goal isn't to be right, it's to find the best solution for their situation. And sometimes this means admitting that my product is not the right fit for this prospect. You say something like, hey, I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. I just want to understand your situation and see what makes sense for both of us. If what we do fits, great. And if not, I'll be honest about that too. And I typically find this kind of completely disarms defensive prospects because there's nothing to defend against. You're not attacking their position or trying to convince them of something. You're joining them on their side in a fight to figure out the truth. Okay, psychology hack 10 here is the confident pause close. When it comes time to close, to present your price, most people ramble or immediately start justifying their cost. And what this does is it signals lack of confidence and invites negotiation. So instead, what you should do is state your price with complete confidence, look them straight in the eyes, and then pause. Say nothing, and do not respond first. Hey, based on everything that we've discussed, the investment is $5,000 per month. And the pause here typically does 2 psychological things. First, it shows you're confident in your pricing, which is good. And second, it forces them to process and respond, which often leads to them justifying the purchase themselves rather than to object. I just want to pause here again to say, if you want the complete framework for implementing really all of these psychology hacks into your next sales call and conversations and process, including the exact scripts and questions to use, I've put together a free planning worksheet that makes this just a simple drag and drop system. Links in the description below. Okay, psychology hack 11 to close more deals is the story stack method. Stories are the most powerful way to influence decisions because they bypass logical resistance and speak directly to emotions. We've talked about emotions in stories a little bit earlier, but the key here is that random stories just don't work. We need strategic story stacking. And the story stack method uses 3 types of stories in your sequence: your story, their story, and the future reality. You see, your story shows how you overcame a similar challenge. Their story reflects their current situation back to them so they more fully understand it. And then their future reality story paints the picture of what's possible. And so here you might say something like, when I first started my agency, I was exactly where you are. Great at the work, but terrible at getting clients. I remember calling 50 prospects and getting zero responses. That sound familiar? But once I figured out this system, everything changed. And within 90 days, I had a 6-month waiting list. Imagine having that same problem too. Many qualified prospects wanting to work with you. You see what we did here? My story, their future reality. Okay, psychology hack 12 to close more deals using their words against them. Again, ethically, please be responsible with this is just like Spider-Man, right? And this is about helping prospects stay consistent with their own stated desires. Yeah, I think prospects are confused sometimes and they sway. Everybody does. And when someone says something but then hesitates to take action, you remind them of their own words. You've probably had really good salespeople do this to you on calls and say something like, hey, earlier you said this was exactly what you're looking for and that you wanted to get started as soon as possible, but now you're saying you want to wait a month. Help me understand what changed. And this creates psychological pressure for them to remain consistent with their previously stated goals. Most people don't want to appear inconsistent or indecisive, and so often they'll kind of overcome their own objections in their mind and move forward. And psychology hack 13 to close more deals is the mirror technique. And this is all about becoming a mirror for your prospects' problems and transforming them into solutions in real time. This is where kind of everything comes together. I take their pain points, their frustrations, their challenges, and I reflect them back as the exact opposite, as solved problems and achieved outcomes. So they might say something like, I'm struggling with inconsistent revenue. And I mirror back, oh, so you want predictable recurring revenue so that you can count on that every month. Or they say, I'm overwhelmed trying to do everything myself. And you say, oh, you want systems and people in place so you can focus on what you do best and be that big kind of lever in your business. And this technique makes them feel like you can read their minds and that you have the exact solution they've been looking for. Okay, so there we have it, the 13 psychology hacks that will really transform how you sell. Remember, this is not manipulation. Please use this responsibly in your business. And they're really about understanding how people really make decisions and helping them choose what's best for them in the end. And the key is to practice these and be ethical. Again, please. Your goal should always be to genuinely help people solve their problems, not just make a sale. If you want to implement these immediately, grab the free planning worksheet I mentioned. It gives you a complete framework for all 13 hacks to include in your next sales conversation. The link's in the description below. And I gotta say, if this helped you out, smash that subscribe button because I share advanced sales marketing and founder psychology hacks every week. Remember, you're just one conversation away from changing someone else's life and yours. Let's make it count.